30 games left. They're kind of running out of time. Like, when is it going to happen that you're going to show the team that you're capable of being? Because I really believe that you have better, if you look on paper. I think they're missing a couple of key things that hopefully Jim Rutherford can figure out a way to address. But on paper, you're a better team than what you've consistently shown this year. And I just feel like the effort level has largely been lacking. And, I think once you've won the Stanley Cup, especially twice like they did, it's hard to get up for all the regular season games. And you've kind of learned the postseason is what matters. And you don't want to expend that kind of effort every single game. Like, it's hard to do that over an 82 game grind. But the level at which they haven't done it this consistently, it just continues to baffle me.
You nailed it. I think that's it exactly. I think the system that Sullivan requires just requires a great deal of hard work and effort, and you can't dog it out there. And when you do, it's a disaster. And they've shown flashes of that. They've shown, they had that win streak where everything was fine, yeah. And then it's just, well, here, let me you had a perfect tweet a few days ago, by the way. You're A. Carducci on Twitter. The Penguins wrapped up the unofficial first half of with a fine microcosm of their season. First off, there they go, making bad decisions and giving up odd man breaks. There's that gifted offense. They're right back in this. Nope, can't sustain for 60. Just not consistent. It's just the lack of consistency.
Yeah, that was just the one game, the Vegas game, but the last one to wrap up the trip. But I thought it was so funny that I'm like, here we go. In one game, they are really expressing it perfectly. Like, they come out flat, they get out to an early deficit, and then they're like, oh yeah, wait, we're losing. We're gifted. We have this offense. We can just throw in a few goals now. And they expend the effort for a certain level of time that it takes to get themselves ahead. And sometimes they can. Sometimes I think the danger with a team like this that has that kind of gifted offense is they have learned sort of a bad lesson that sometimes that works. And okay, that's enough. And we can skate by and we can win like this. And then when you're facing a team that is a good team, or even, a pretty average team, sometimes that team can still find a way to beat you if you then go back into coasting. And that's what they did. And, Vegas just comes back and takes advantage. And I just think when the Penguins get lazy, they start making these bad decisions. Teams pick off these bad passes. And, when the Penguins are making bad decisions, they just look so easy to beat. You just see these sort of lazy plays, and Vegas, like that night, Jonathan Marchessault was just all over them, and you just shake your head like, which version of the Penguins is going to show up tonight? And at this point, you just kind of never know.
You mentioned that they're missing some pieces. It's basically a certainty that Brassard's getting traded, right?
Yeah, I think. For a little while, I was kind of getting excited thinking, wow, they seem to be, they're trying him on some different lines. Like, maybe he's going to mesh with Kessel on that third line. Maybe something's going to work out here. Maybe they're finding combinations that are going to work. In the end, I think when Jim Rutherford comes out and says that he feels you've been a disappointment, he's pretty much said that outright at this point. I think there's no going back from that. I think Jim Rutherford is not happy with what he's gotten from Derick Brassard since that trade. And I'm not sure why it hasn't worked, honestly. On paper, it should have worked. Derick Brassard's a great hockey player, and he's not a less great hockey player than he was a year ago when he got traded here. And I think with another team, he could potentially be really successful again. But unfortunately, right now, his value's probably dropped a bit. And Penguins bought pretty high on him. They did manage to get some salary retained in that deal, but the player cost was high, and it just didn't work out as they expected. I think Rutherford is ready to admit this didn't work and move on.
So the question is, you trade Brassard, you're going to need a third line center. Is that somebody on the team? Is that Sheahan, Cullen? Is that somebody from Wilkes-Barre? Like, Teddy Bluger? Is that, or are they going to have to trade for one? What do you think? Do you think in-house they have somebody that could just step in that third line center role?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally they're thinking third line center in exchange for Derick Brassard. I mean, Derick Brassard is probably somebody's second line center. So in theory, maybe there's a team that's willing to deal their third line center for your potential second line center. On almost any other team, he has that potential to be a second line center, and perhaps that's part of the reason that he has struggled here is just being in such a different role with different expectations. So I think that's a possibility. I wonder a lot of the time if Riley Sheahan has struggled a lot this year compared to last year because his role has been so different and decreased. So I wouldn't mind seeing him elevated to that third line center role and see if he could recapture the magic that made him so successful last year again. Teddy Bluger at some point has to get a shot here. And I don't know if it'll be later this year. By next year, he pretty certainly has to be up and be part of the Penguins lineup because he is pretty much tapped out what he can do at the AHL level and needs to be an NHL player. So by next year, I would expect him filling a role like that. But for this year, I mean, I think they're searching for that. I wouldn't mind seeing it be, you try Riley Sheahan in that role, and maybe instead of the third line center for Derick Brassard, you go for the winger, because to me, getting a winger that could perhaps spark Evgeny Malkin, I'm looking for a second line winger for Derick Brassard. If it's me, that to me is the greater concern.
Is that maybe I keep hearing Michael Furland of the Hurricanes? Do you think he would be a good fit for the Penguins?
He'd be an amazing fit for the Penguins. He'd be really exciting on this team. He's an exciting young winger. He's 26 years old, I think. The downside of him is he's an unrestricted free agent after the season, so technically he's a rental, but his cap hit is really low right now. I think it's $1.75 million. You'd have about 4 months to talk to him, get him to hopefully love your team and talk extension with him. I think the concern with a player like him, and of course, he's with Carolina, so Jim Rutherford has plenty of connections there that you know that he loves to deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. So I know they've definitely inquired about him. I think the concern is, can the Penguins offer what other teams are going to offer for a player like that who's pretty certainly going to move at the deadline? And I don't know if they're going to, because I think Carolina's probably going to get like a first round pick and a prospect for him at least. And the Penguins just keep trading these first round picks every year. Are they willing to trade it again this year? How long can you keep doing that and the cupboard stays dry? I don't know. So are they willing to do that? Are they all in again every year until Crosby and Malkin retire? I'm not sure. So something in me says maybe they are. Maybe if they think that's a missing piece, and but gosh, a first round pick for an unrestricted free agent, that's just so painful. So not sure how much they're willing to give up, but there might be a team that's willing to give more than the Penguins are for him, but he'd be a great fit if they can make it work.
Yeah, he sounds like a physical guy, which they desperately need, and that would be great. But God, yeah, I mean, how many times do you have to mortgage the future? Like at some point, you have to consider thinking about the future and just not trading your first round pick every single year.
I feel like they will think about the future when Crosby and Malkin are nearing the end. They'll be like, okay, what are we going to do now? Let's think about the wholesale rebuild. But up until that point, I just feel like as much as they can be all in every year, they want to be all in every year. So wouldn't be shocked to see them mortgage whatever the future they had to. Certainly hope they wouldn't sacrifice a prospect like a Teddy Bluger. That would be awful. That would be a prospect I wouldn't want to see lose. But I definitely think, as far a prospect like a Tristan Jarry, I don't know how much value he has at this point, since the Penguins have not really given him a chance to shine at the NHL level for a while. but he still has tremendous upside, and any team looking for a future goalie for their organization could certainly do worse than a Tristan Jarry. I still think he'll be very successful in this league. I do expect them to listen to offers for him at the deadline, so interested to see what all happens there, but I think that's another piece that could move. They're absolutely going to listen to offers for defensemen. They're going to have way too many. So they have some pieces to move.
Yeah, I think Jari's definitely gone. As soon as they signed DeSmith to that extension, it's like, oh, that's a big roadblock for him, which is a shame because I mean Jari does have that pedigree, but it's just never going to work here. Like, okay,
I'm disappointed for him that it didn't work out in Pittsburgh. I was really excited to see him, potentially move up the ranks in Pittsburgh. But at this point, I'm more excited to see him hopefully get a chance with another organization because, as you said, there's the roadblock there, and it's not going to happen here. So hopefully, time for him to start fresh.
Yeah. So Schultz is coming back soon, and that presents a few more choices that the Penguins are going to have to make. For one thing, when he comes back, isn't that really going to hurt them salary cap wise? I mean, they're going to be right up against the cap.
Yeah, they're going to be right up against the cap for sure. But, you're late in the season and things start to get prorated, and they definitely will, start working with, with every dollar they can to make things work. And I do expect to see them start making moves to get rid of some salary at the deadline. Like they're going to have to get rid of bodies too, so that's going to make an impact. When Justin Schultz gets back, you're going to have, not only are you going to have your top 6 defensemen, which of course he immediately slides into, but from my perspective, the 3 that are sort of the outside looking in, and this, by the way, to everybody that's not a fan of Jack Johnson, I'm not saying he's top 6 from the perspective of I'm dying for him to be top 6. I'm saying, simple fact of the matter is he's going to be in your top 6. So I think from the perspective of who is your top 6, you have to look at it as you have Letang and Dumoulin, you have Mata and Schultz. You're going to have, I think at this point, you have to look at Johnson, and probably Pettersson has really been impressive. And it probably puts Riikola on the outside. It probably puts Jamie Alexiak on the outside. And I've really liked Jamie Alexiak's play in Pittsburgh. Big physical defenseman, an element they had been missing in a lot of respects. I think the scratches at some points this season kind of tell the story there. And, Chad Ruhwedel's on the outside too in that scenario, but Alexiak's kind of the biggest name. To me, that's a guy who you could move some salary and probably a body that you're looking to move.
Riikola has options, right? I think he can be sent down.
Yeah, he absolutely can.
So that helps a little. That takes care of one body, but yeah, they're just way too many defensemen right now.
Which is a great luxury to have. I mean, at least on the right side, you have that to deal with, and you're not. That's one need at the deadline that you're not trying to address. I think you're looking for the third line center potentially. You're looking for a winger, but defenseman, you're not only in good shape, but you're pretty stacked.
Yep. I have a feeling this team is going to look a little bit different a few weeks from now. So we'll see. Jim Rutherford is not shy about making that deal.
Oh, Jim Rutherford is, he's a guy who is going to go for it. He has shown that ever since he's been here. And I think he feels really, trying to think of the word. I think he understands the trust the organization has put in him, with the fact that he has a team that has a Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Matt Murray, he's really been entrusted with a team that has the core of a perennial Stanley Cup contender. I don't think he takes that lightly. I think he feels an obligation to try to assemble around that core every year and try to give them the best team that he can to